We're moving to AI first world. The user will just continue to buy, but the ways and medium of how they buy might tweak and change.
It's a very impulsive behavior. So that's the reason why days like 11/11, 10/10, and people will want to find a reason to shop.
So like I asked myself, for ShopBack in the AI first world, what are things that we have that are unique? And how can we use that uniqueness to build unique things for the users?
If you're from Asia, you may already know the concept of cashback. You buy something, and a small percentage comes back to you. ShopBack is one of the pioneer players that made this habit mainstream across the region. In 2025, ShopBack serves more than 50 million users across 13 markets worldwide. And now, it's entering Germany and the US, something only a few of Southeast Asian tech companies have ever attempted. So how do they build a consumer marketplace that lasts 10 years in one of the toughest regions in the world, surviving brutal competition, COVID, and even a major trust crisis in fintech? EO Asia is where Asia's defining companies tell their stories. Like and subscribe for real lessons on building in Asia.
Nice to meet you. I'm Henry, co-founder and CEO of ShopBack. I was a very studious kid growing up in the earlier years, but later in life, in university and junior college, I learned there's a lot more to life than just studying. And one thing that was very interesting was an internship that I took in the United States. I was part of a program called the NUS Overseas College, where they send you to work for small early stage startups across the world, where I spent almost 2 years working for an early stage startup. And that really opened my eyes to entrepreneurship and how the internet economy is going to be a very real thing. My co-founder Joel actually went to China.
I think it was a very interesting time to be in Shanghai. I think at that time was about 2009, 2010. So the tech boom was in full bloom. That were the early days of when I think Tencent, Alibaba was still growing. So I think it really sort of gave a crystal ball of what was to come.
E-commerce was already a part of day-to-day life in China and in the US. When I went to the US, it was amazing to use Amazon and all the e-commerce shops to shop online, right? And that was very different from Southeast Asia, where everything was still brick and mortar. There was no concept of e-commerce. So when we went there, we knew that entrepreneurship is interesting because you use business to solve real-world problems. So when we came back, we joined an e-commerce company for really exposure and to learn more. This was the very first e-commerce company in Asia. And after a year, we decided to leave and start ShopBack. I was only 26 when we started, or 27. So we're still very early in our careers. To be honest, there's very little to lose when you're so early. We were exposed as interns to work at early stage startups. And that exposure itself really opened us to the worldview of taking risks, which I think is just common when you are going to start a business.
While we are very optimistic people, we also, I think, thought about it and we told each other that I would say a more conditional quit, right? We were like, if we could raise this amount of money, let's quit.
And we raised $500,000 with just our PowerPoint deck. So that gave us conviction to quit.
I don't think we can foretell the future, but I think we can make decisions based on the best possible odds. And I always think about it, whatever information that I can get that can help me make better decisions, that help me increase the odds of success, I think it's good. And similar to poker, if every time you are making a bet, it is always at good odds, eventually, mathematically, you will surely win. You might not win all the time, but in the long run, you almost would likely to make the correct decisions. So I think that gives some confidence and also shows like, hey, there are good odds to this, or better odds to this, and therefore we left our job.
When we started ShopBack, the first 3 ideas really flopped. They had some product market fit, but they couldn't scale. We started a one-day flash sale. That was the first idea. But we very quickly realized that, hey, you only can make money one day in the whole year. So we iterated from this idea to become a 3-month flash sale. Again, you only can make money 3 months. The other 9 months, you don't make money. And that's where we evolved to the concept of cashback. This idea actually started in the US. It helped the users to save money, and it helps the brands to connect with the users in a more cost-effective way. And we thought to ourselves, hey, we knew e-commerce is going to grow in Southeast Asia. Why don't we adopt this idea and out-execute in Southeast Asia? So we brought the idea to Southeast Asia. We didn't invent the idea. And we really just grew with this business model, knowing that it's win-win for members and merchants alike.
So I think one is like finding that business model that is win-win-win. Yeah, I think it's important because no matter what you do, if you don't find a good foundation as a business model, the thing can't can't move.
And I think when you get product market fit, it's very obvious. You see customers coming back and starting to compound. And that's why we knew that we have a winning idea.
Most marketplaces fail not because they can't grow, but because their growth doesn't loop. Before ShopBack expanded to new markets, they obsessed over one question: would this still work if we did nothing to push it?
Anywhere in the world, I think shoppers always want two things. Shoppers are savvy. Nobody wants a bad deal, right? And everyone wants to get a better deal in a way that's smarter and more effective. I think the second thing we learn about shopping is that it's a very impulsive behavior. So that's the reason why days like 11/11, 10/10, and people will want to find a reason to shop. And we give them the extra reason to buy something new, try something from a new retailer, and that's how the business works.
So we didn't see like overnight success. We launched it and overnight, boom, it became a success. That wasn't the case. But what we saw was that as the users started to come in, their retention rates were very high.
So I think customer acquisition everywhere is difficult. And I'm always a big believer in serving your current customer well and let your current customers be the best advocate for your new customers.
So that's actually what we saw. So that fits that whole funnel of user coming in, user likes the product, continues to use the product, refers their friend, and then you start to have a cycle of people coming in. It grew and grew.
So again, word of mouth, referrals, these are big parts of growth channels for us. We believe a lot in organic growth. Of course, we do invest in marketing as a way to accelerate growth as well, but organic referrals is a big part of our strategy.
So the merchant side, I would say it was not easy at the start. We must understand the different intentions of users and merchants. For users, sometimes a lot of things come from feeling. What's the utility that they can get from that? So you need to account for these. For merchants, because it is most of the time it's a job. It's something that they're doing. So it's actually very KPI driven. You must understand how are you able to create value for them. First thing I would say, we always go above and beyond, like to get in the first pool of merchants. These are actually what I call the early adopters. Similar to all these users, in the merchant world, there are also companies that are more open to being early adopters, and also companies that are more like maybe early followers, right? So we try to find merchants that are open to being early adopters, early followers. So I think very early on, we were able to get quite a few of the tech companies. For example, I think like Zalora is definitely one of the first few clients, Lazada, things like that. And these are like companies that tend to be the early adopters of new things. And as we get bigger, then you slowly, like the innovation curve, you start to get different pools of merchants.
And that's why it's win-win. The merchants bear no risk until there's a successful sale, and the members, the magic moment comes when they get real money sent to their bank account. So we were very lucky. We got product market fit within 6 months in Singapore, and within another 6 months, within the first year, we expanded to Malaysia.
In 2020, right as ShopBack was scaling across multiple markets, the company faced a major data breach. This was the lowest point in ShopBack's history.
I always remember knowing about it early in the morning, like at 1, 2 a.m. The first one was a sense of guilt. I think ultimately we are responsible for millions of users, tens of millions of users across many markets. And I felt like I have disappointed our members and our merchants. I always remember actually the day before we announced this to our members and to the public. I called my mother. I told her that the next day your son will be very famous for the wrong reasons. Don't worry, everything is okay. But it's the right thing for us to do. And I think the next day we made the announcement. Obviously there was a lot of heat. A lot of members were very angry with us. But they also know that we were transparent with them. Guilt is a feeling, but action is what helps make it better. We try to understand the problem from different streams. I think what kept us very steady is that we were very clear that we didn't want to hide this data breach. So we wanted to be very transparent with our users, transparent with our members and merchants. And we know that we had to be accountable for the mistake that we made. And I think that transparency was something that really guided us through that journey. It ultimately made us a much better company. I was never alone. Even in the cybersecurity breach, in other incidences that happened to us, there's always a team that really bring us through from dark to happier days. Across so many markets, they really support the vision, advance the vision, and make us a better company. And I think it's this team that I'm thankful and also very reliant on to continue to grow. I think that authenticity again served us very well. It made me a lot more convinced that I should be authentic as a leader, not just inside the company, but outside the company. And that will serve us well ultimately in the long run.
After nearly a decade building across APAC, ShopBack entered Germany in 2023 and expanded into the US in 2025, a path very few Southeast Asian consumer startups ever take.
So what we notice is that fighting in small or medium or large market is the same amount of effort, but the outcome is different. So when we think about it, we're like, hey, it will take the same amount of localization, same amount of effort that we need. Why not let's try a big market?
I think the hardest challenge for us was a mental one. So when we first went out of Southeast Asia to Taiwan, after that we decided to go to Australia. The biggest challenge was a mental block. And once we realized that actually the block was just in our head and that we are already operating in 6 or 7 different cultures, we already understand how to localize to different time zones, different merchants. Why can't we do that in a market like Australia, where it's a more Western market? And once we overcome that mental challenge, it was a joy to enter Australia, and we are very proud to be market leaders in Australia today.
So you would see that the markets that we go into recently, like Germany and US, they are bigger markets. And that also reflects the ambition that we have as well. The part that's very important for ourselves is to ask ourselves, why are we better or differentiated from the players that are in the market? That I think is a extremely important point to note, because the goal is not to launch in the US. The goal is to launch in the US and get traction. So I would say, ask yourself, what is that differentiation? So for example, in the US, I would say a lot of the players are actually very focused on the website. So for example, in Asia, app is everything, right? If you think about it, most of your purchases and a lot of what you do happens on the app itself. How can we make that experience similar in the US as well?
I think the second one is really the innovation mindset that we have. So we always think of new products that can resonate with the users.
For example, we recently have games. So you play games, and according to the level that you cross, you get rewards. And those are things that our partners don't have, and we can see that helps us differentiate ourselves from our competitors in the market. Then the second one will be taking a longer term approach. So going there and setting that up, I think that's the easy part. Then it's like, what is the time frame that you are willing to invest and grow and make sure that that business becomes a big one? Because the market there is so big. If you just think of maybe smaller market in APAC, you could very quickly acquire a sizable sum of users and sizable percentage of the population in APAC. But in the US, you're talking about the biggest consumer market in the world. You know, how long are you willing to invest and to grow in there and try to find growth there? I think do every entrepreneurs have up and down? Foundationally, you gotta ask yourselves, are you passionate about what you're building? And I'm passionate about what I'm doing. So I think that helps. Second one I would say is like, I think you also need to build your energy, not just internally, but also externally. So I always try to mix or also spend time with people that have high energy as well. And the last one I would say is like, always ask yourself, what are new things you are doing that's making yesterday better today, right? And also in the future. Because end of the day, if you are always doing the same thing, I'm quite sure your energy level over time tapers off. That's normal. But if you're constantly thinking how to be better and you're doing new things, that changes you. That makes you constantly think what's gonna happen in the future. Because if you're always doing the same thing, you should assume that your future is constant. But if you're constantly doing new things, for example, in the AI world, you're constantly building new propositions, you're tweaking new things to make things better, then actually your future always looks brighter and brighter. And that's 100% within your control today.
Winning once doesn't protect you forever. In an AI-first world, ShopBack realized the next advantage wouldn't come from expansion, but evolution.
I think let's call the elephant in the room. We're moving to AI-first world, right? And we constantly keep asking ourselves, how does ShopBack play in the AI-first world? And I'm sure every shopping merchant, every shopping brand, every shopping platform will ask the same question, because the user will just continue to buy, right? But the ways and medium of how they buy might tweak and change. So like I ask myself, for ShopBack in the AI first world, what are things that we have that are unique, and how can we use that uniqueness to build unique things for the users? So for example, first thing I'm confident is that ShopBack has very unique data about the user. We know what you buy, we know where you buy across, right? And through that, across multiple retailers, for example. Second one, I would say we have unique moments with the user. So there are some companies that have a lot of users, but they don't actually get to talk so much with the user, right? But for ShopBack, daily, there are millions of customers that come here and try to interact and use our app. So we have a moment with them that we can try to talk to them, influence them, try to give them offers that make sense for them. And then last but not least, I think continue to build on the trust. Trust is something that it takes so many years to build up. We are lucky we have that. We are known for that. How do we build on that? But for me, I always think about like, what's the next 2 years, 3 years that we are able to do? And we must be able to calibrate and grow the ambition along the way.
So you see us, we are now present in 13 markets. We are market leaders in 10 of them. We have to fight local competitors, global competitors.
Did we start out with a global ambition for ShopBack? No. We started as a Singapore company wanting to expand in Southeast Asia. But then as we have more data points, as we get better, then we progress into an APAC ambition. And then from there we grew as well. We were like, hey, these are new learnings, these are things we got better. And then we had global ambitions. So end of the day, I would say the important part is really how can we constantly be putting more data into our own LLM, sort of our own company's decision-making process. And from there, we can make better and better decisions.
I think the next 10 years, we will still continue to open up new markets. But our focus really is to grow depth in market. We want to be a lot more relevant to our members' everyday lives, both online and offline, find new ways to save money, save time, and get that little bit more delight.
And then the last one I would say is actually looking towards the future. We are always thinking, how do you make tomorrow better than today and today better than yesterday? And as long as you keep progressing, it seems small, but when you compound it, it's a lot, right? And that I think is the main reason why we'll be able to win. Because if you look at it, there have always been competitors that come up, but they're like a shooting star. They come up and then after a while they go off, right? But I think for us, we're here for the long run. So how do we keep improving, making something better? How do we launch new products? How do we come up with something new? How do we see, like for example, how do we make sure that we are relevant in the AI first world, right? And always looking towards the future. Because every time you look towards the future, it makes today much brighter. And I think that helps us to keep moving forward.